Hey fellow explorers, we've got two more cities going head-to-head in the Yellow Productions Ultimate Travel Showdown. In this episode, we're going to be comparing London in the United Kingdom to Sydney, Australia. Comparing these two cities in 12 different areas, everything from the size to the vibe to getting in to getting around, to the cost, to the restaurants, to the hotels, to the best things to do, to the day trips, to find out which is the ultimate city for you to travel to. All right, and as we get started, we are first going to be talking about the size and population to just compare how big these two cities are. And so first, let's go ahead and take a look at the statistics by the numbers. And I'm going to make this big so that you can kind of see these different things over here. And so taking a look at London, for London, it has a population of 8.9 million. Compare that to Sydney, a little smaller, 5.4 million. But if we look at the land area, this is pretty interesting. The land area of London is about 1,500 square kilometers or 600 square miles. How does that compare to the land area of Sydney? As I make myself go away so you can see it better, the land area of Sydney is huge, 12,000 square miles. It'll fit just about 8 Londons inside of Sydney. So as you can see, London, a lot more people, a lot smaller space. Sydney, a lot less people, a lot bigger space. Now, how does that compare to the overall population in the two countries? London has, the UK has 70 million people, 9 of which live in London. And then in Sydney, we've got about 30 million people in the country of Australia, 27 to be exact as of this year's estimates, with about 5 of those in Sydney. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next category to compare these two, which is the vibe and the atmosphere, just how it feels to go to these two cities. And we're gonna start with London. We got the blue when we talk about London. So how does it feel to go to London? London is a historic and energetic capital. It's a bustling global hub where you've got the double-decker buses, you've got Big Ben, you've got the River Thames, you've got the Queen, the King, the Buckingham Castle. There's just like all this amazing things that even if you've never been to London, growing up, you've definitely read about it in the history books. Heading over just to the next to that to look at the climate and the atmosphere in London, it's a cool and cozy place. You know, it's got like a lot of mist and a lot of rain, a lot of gray. The last time I was in London, they said they had like a 2-week spell of not a single minute, or maybe there was not more than 10, not a single minute of sun, but the sun wasn't out for more than 10 minutes continuously in those 2 weeks that I was there in London. And I call it cozy because I feel like London's the kind of place that, you know, it's cold and it's rainy, and so you just want to tuck in like a cozy pub somewhere. But London has a thriving the pub culture and a thriving arts scene. We're going to talk more about the museums later, but some of the world's best museums are in London, and definitely I would say London is this global cultural leader. It's got the history, it's got finance, it's got ideas, a lot of definitely deep intellectual roots in London. Oxford, one of the world's best universities, just a short train ride outside of central London. Okay, how do we compare that vibe to Sydney? And we've got the yellow for Sydney, because Sydney, the overall vibe in Sydney is laid back and sun-drenched. Sydney blends sophistication with an unparalleled beach lifestyle. We're gonna get to talk about all the beaches later, but London, you've got this big city, and it's definitely not near a beach. And the beaches that are in the UK, they're not as good as the ones in Australia. Just objectively speaking, Australia's beaches are much nicer. And so, while maybe I've got the words here that say it's an endless summer, Sydney does have a winter, but the winters in Sydney are much more mild and still much more sunny and cheery than you'll find in London. And so the feel of being in Sydney is a lot more outdoor recreation. When you're in the city, you're going to be spending a lot more outdoors time looking at the coastal beauty, going for walks, and so the primary identity of Sydney is less of the, big museums and the intellectual sort of thing and stay inside because it's cold and rainy, but to spend your time on the coast, centered on sun, surf, and spectacular natural beauty. By the way, for those of you who have been to London and Sydney, let me know what you think. Am I right on the vibe? Am I wrong on the vibe? What do you think about the vibes of the different places or the different categories we're going to be going? I'm recording this as a live stream, so I'll be taking comments as we go, and I'm definitely interested to see the comments for those of you that are watching the archive. All right, so Alex, PDX Aviation, says London is definitely more interesting than Sydney. I guess depending upon what interests you, right? Like if you were interested in surfing, then Sydney would absolutely be more interesting, I would say. Databetic said Sydney used to have a monorail. That was definitely before my time. I've never seen the monorail in Sydney. Janelle says, I had no idea the population of London was so high. A lot of people live in and around London. Brandon says, I need warm weather to survive. To thrive and survive. I am a warm weather boy myself. HW Wander says, I'm in Sydney now. I'm dripping in sweat as I watch your stream. So humid here in February. I was in Sydney about this time last year, and I was also dripping in sweat. It was so hot. We're going to get going to... we're going to get going to the weather in one of the things we're going to compare as we go. Joanna says, so Sydney first before going to London. Brandon says, Sydney seems more my vibe. Justin says, as an Australian, I find the culture in London very similar. It's a home away from home. There definitely is a lot of similarity between these two cities, which is what makes them super great to compare. Okay, let's go on now to getting into London versus Sydney. So starting with London. London has two major airports in London. There's more than two airports. There's like 5 airports around London, but two major ones. London Heathrow, which is the airport in London. It's off to the west. And then Gatwick, which is to the south. Heathrow is definitely the global hub of the United Kingdom and frankly a global hub in the aviation industry. It is definitely between the two airports. We're going to talk more about Sydney Airport in a moment, but comparing, contrasting which one's easier to get to, London Heathrow definitely has way more flights to way more destinations than Sydney ever does just because of its location right there off the coast of Europe, connecting North America to Europe. Getting into the city, you can take the tube, you can take there's like the high-speed rail that they have that goes into Paddington Station. You can take a taxi. If you want to take the subway, it's going to take you about 30 minutes to an hour, depending upon how far you're going. And if you're taking a taxi from London Heathrow or Gatwick, it's going to be really expensive. Taxis are like 50 to 80 pounds plus. Think like $100, $100 to get yourself into the city from the airport if you're taking a taxi. Most people say like, Chris, why would you do that? Take the tube for like 5 pounds or something like that. Sure, it's going to take you longer. Some people still want to take a taxi. Okay, let's talk about Sydney on the other hand. So while Sydney doesn't have as many flights to it. It is definitely well connected to the world because lots of people want to go to Sydney. So there are a lot of direct flights from places. But boy, I would say for the world's population, for most people, it's probably longer to get to Sydney than to get to London. And you might go, well, Chris, I mean, there's a whole bunch of people like in Asia that are closer to Australia. Okay, fine. I agree. But depends on where you are as to which one's closer or further away. Sydney Airport, definitely going to be smaller than London Heathrow, but the pro of Sydney Airport is it is much closer to the city center than the London airports are. It is about, in London, Heathrow Airport is about 23 kilometers or 14 miles from central London. Sydney Airport is 8 kilometers or 5 miles. And the traffic in Sydney is a lot better than the traffic in London, so much quicker to get in to the city center. Think instead of an hour, think 13 minutes. That's right, 13 minutes will get you from Sydney Airport into the city center. If you're taking a taxi, about 50 Australian dollars, which is maybe 35 US dollars if I'm just doing mental math on the top of my head. Third of the price of what you would pay London for a taxi, and gonna be a lot quicker. Think 20 minutes instead of an hour in the taxi. Okay, so definitely Australia, once you get to the airport, is going to be more convenient to get into the city. London Heathrow is probably going to be easier for most people to get to because they'll have more flights to get there. Yip Animation says, do I prefer British Airways or Virgin Atlantic? I have only flown each one once. And so I don't know that I've flown them enough to really have a great preference either way. I tend to be a United flyer, and United will get me to London Heathrow as much as British Airways will. The last time I flew British Airways was when I was going from London someplace else onwards. So I needed to fly British Airways. Okay. Alex says London has culture and history, nothing against Sydney, but less appealing to me. Maybe it's being from the Pacific Northwest. That's the Seattle, Oregon area in the USA. I find the weather in England more desirable. Also, I could see how you would find the weather in England to be more similar to the weather that you are used to. Databetic says London has the train to Hogwarts. It does for those Harry Potter's fans out there. Steven says, I wonder what it would be like to fly all the way from where I am in Calgary to Sydney and the huge weather change. It would definitely be a lot warmer right now in Sydney than I'm sure it is in Calgary. But speaking of trains, Brandon just came back from Japan, and he says that after experiencing the Shinkansen, the bullet train in Japan, any other rail service pales in comparison, which is so true. Kathy from Australia says the train into the Sydney Central Business District, CBD, is so easy from the airport. I agree. I love getting into the Sydney. I love getting into the city from the airport in Sydney. Grant says the Sydney weather seems similar to Nolans in Louisiana. Grant is probably shivering with my three awful pronunciations of that city. Okay. Justin says it could take an hour to get to the city from Sydney in heavy traffic. Take the train. There you go. Though they just built like all these tunnels, right? And things like that. They help get from the airport into the city. So I found that to help make the drive in faster. Okay. So let's go to the next category to compare these two world capitals in getting around. So once you're in the city, what's it like to get around London? What's it like to get around Sydney? And so starting with London. London has one of the world's oldest, most extensive passenger rail networks, known as the London Underground, though many people just call it the Tube for short. It is an amazingly great way to get around London. It's super comprehensive. It'll get you pretty much anywhere you need to go. Sometimes you'll take a bus in a pinch, and the bus network in London is great too, from the single-decker buses to the double-decker buses, though expensive. The public transit in London can be pretty expensive, and if you're walking around, topographically, London is generally easy to walk around, and so because the tube's kind of expensive for, short trips, you go like, instead of taking the train, I'm gonna hoof it on my feet. The good news is London is pretty flat, so pretty easy to walk around the whole city. You're not gonna find many hills getting in your way. And so that's, what London right there looks like from the sky, making that big, and you can see it's just a pretty flat plain, which really, I'm a walker, so I will walk long ways in London. Sydney, on the other hand, does have a train. It has a light rail network, and it has a commuter kind of train network. I would say it's a good public transit system. It is not as good as the London Underground or the London Tube. What Sydney does have going for it is the public transit in Sydney is cheaper than that of London. In Sydney, there's some pretty aggressive daily and weekly fare caps. So if you're using your transit card, then every day at a certain amount, it doesn't matter how much you ride, you're not going to get charged more than that. For a week, it's something like $30 US or something like that. You'll cap it on a week, like all you can ride for a week of public transit for $30 US, which is pretty cool. The other really cool part about Sydney's public transit system, with Sydney being on the water, you've certainly seen the pictures of the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, and this picture right here on the water, is it has a really extensive ferry network that is public transit to get you around. You know, you tap your transit card on, you tap your transit card off, you don't need to buy tickets, and so that's a really fun, iconic way to get around Sydney. Much more beautiful than cruising down the River Thames. The topography, on the other hand, in Sydney is much more challenging than that of London. And sure, while around the water, it's pretty flat. Going up in the central business district, going over to the neighborhood known as the Rocks, which is right underneath the Harbour Bridge, is quite hilly. And so you're definitely going to be getting much more of a workout pedestrian walking through Sydney than you are through London. And in Sydney, we just talked about it being really hot. And so the intense subtropical heat will definitely drive you as a visitor to be seeking out public transit or rideshare a bit more, particularly if you're there in summer. Alex says, big win for ferries. One of my favorite ways to get around Puget Sound when I'm going out to Whidbey Island, which are places in Washington State. Databetic says a difference in these two places is in the name of this burger chain. So the burger chain called Burger King in London is called Burger King, but in Sydney is called Hungry Jack's, and indeed they are. So if you find yourself in Sydney and you see Hungry Jack's and you're like, oh, that's a new hamburger chain I've never eaten at, it's a Burger King. So if you've eaten a Whopper at the Burger King, you've eaten a Hungry Jack's. Aloha Point Traveler in Hawaii. I'm glad to hear. Glad to hear it's looking good during the golden hour in Maui. Kathy also likes the ferries in Sydney. I love the ferries too. Janelle says, if you're loving this video, please give it a like. We've got 90 viewers on, 26 likes. I'd love to get us up to 50 likes on this video, so if you haven't pressed the thumbs up button, please do, because it really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. It lets YouTube know that you're enjoying the video so they can spread it to more people. Whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the archive, hitting that like button still helps. Thank you so much. Okay, Point Traveler, who's in Hawaii right now, says, I would love to go to Sydney, but I would need Kathy to show you around. Now, right, I don't know if Kathy is offering any Sydney tours, and that's where she says she lives in Melbourne, but she could probably organize like a Yellow Productions meetup in Sydney. She didn't say that, but I had some words into her mouth. Okay, Justin says the burgers are better at Hungry Jack's. They're better at Hungry Jack's than they are at Burger King, even though it's the same chain. Tell me why. What makes the burgers better at Hungry Jack's in Australia than at Burger King in London? And Frania says, love your work, Yellow. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay. And I see we're going up in the likes, so thank you for those that have hit the like button. We can hit a few more thumbs too. Okay. Going on to the fifth area to compare London and Sydney in, the weather and the climate. And we're here in the blue, so we're going to start with London. But first, I am thirsty, so I am going to drink something. What am I drinking today? Today, I am drinking the Pukka green tea. This is from Singapore. It's made in Singapore. This is the jasmine tea. Pleasant. A bit sweetened. This is it has 60 calories in there, so kind of a medium sweet drink. All right. I think I'd prefer it if it had a little less sugar. Okay. So let's talk about the weather here in London. London, cloudy. Definitely known for being cloudy and rainy, like half the year. Half the year, cloudy and rainy. And you know what? This is one of those where some Londoners would be like, Chris, it doesn't really rain that much. You know, I think these average totals are like, if there's one raindrop that day, it's considered a rainy day. So either way, pack an umbrella when you go to London. London is a northern hemisphere destination, so it has its summer in June and August, relatively mild temperatures, average of 73 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius. In winter, the days do get pretty cold and short, and it like generally stays above freezing. You're not going to get much snow in London. There. So let's go ahead and go on to Sydney. Okay, so Sydney definitely has that endless summer feel, and you kind of like flip-flop on the, there's this much rain and clouds in London, there's that much sun in Sydney. Sydney has more than 200 sunny days a year, but that does make it hot and humid in the summer. Sun safety is key. Make sure you have your sunscreen and your hat if you're fair-skinned. The seasons are flipped in Sydney from what they are in London, since Sydney's in the southern hemisphere, and so they experience their summer in December to February. It gets really hot and really humid. I don't know what happened to my temperatures on this chart, but the summer temperature definitely gets way more than 18 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. It gets hot, even in the Celsius. It gets like in the 35 Celsius, like 40 Celsius. Think like 80, 90, 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Like, it's really hot in the summer. The winters generally stay pretty mild. The showers, definitely you get with those hot temperatures. You can get the rain showers in the summer. So it's important to stay hydrated wherever you go. Okay. Looking at this. Okay. And Franya says, Francis and Tanya from Canberra, formerly Sydney. Awesome. Thank you for joining in from Canberra. All right. Oh, apparently I didn't realize that the Hungry Jack slogan is the burgers are better at Hungry Jack. So now I know. And Justin says, it holds true, but many people prefer them to Macca's, McDonald's. Macca's. I always have a hard time with how y'all pronounce that. But yes, it's we call them Mickey D's here in the USA, but it definitely has the big, I call it Big Mac, so Macca's, that's how I pronounce it. All right. Paul says Sydney gets good thunderstorms. They do. When I was there last year, I was caught in some pretty impressive rain. And I didn't have an umbrella, and so I picked up like a cardboard from someplace, and I was using the cardboard to walk back to my hotel from the restaurant. Justin says Sydney and Brisbane don't get as hot as Melbourne, but they are much more humid, rarely above 35. I don't know. I was there when it was 40, I feel like. Okay. Diabetics, a similarity that they have in common. They do, and I don't think I don't have this listed in my outline, so Diabetic, thanks for bringing it up. They drive on the wrong side of the road. Well said. All right. Yes. You need to, if you're coming from the USA, then you need to look the other ways for cars because they're driving on the other side. Okay. And Yip Animation says, I've heard the weather in Perth is similar to that of LA. I've not yet been to Perth. Okay. Let's go ahead and go on to the beaches and the parks. And so in this one, we're going to start with Sydney because if what you are looking for is a beach, then Sydney is where you're going to go. Sydney completely dominates the conversation when it comes to beaches. Sydney, while it has this, if you think of Sydney and you think of the Opera House and you think of this tall central business district, you wouldn't often necessarily equate that to amazing beaches, but just a short, 15 or 20 minute drive or train ride from the central business district, you end up with actually really great beaches or a ferry ride. Manly Beach is just a short ferry ride from Circular Quay, one of the transit hubs in the central business district, and is a super great beach. If we blow this picture up, and they're just not flat sandy beaches, but they're like these cool coves and these cool cliffs. So if you are seeking warm weather, sun, beaches, swimming, as long as you don't mind a few sharks nibbling on you. They do have sharks. When I was there, they had shark warnings a few times. Yeah, so that's P. And they close the beach. They're pretty serious about it. It's a regular thing where the lifeguard's like, shark! Everybody out of the water! Watch the shark. Okay, no more sharks. Slowly open it up a bit more. So P. Nguyen says, best shark nets. Yes, Manly Beach. there you go. You can swim on the bay side, and there are indeed shark nets. Joanna says, I would go for the pic. The beach has super great pictures. Franya says, both cities have great pubs and cricket. They sure do. Justin says, shark season isn't bad this year. Many attacks. See, I do not kid. I do not kid about the sharks in Australia. The joke is that in Australia, like, there's a lot more things there that are trying to kill you. So while this isn't like a ranking element that I put in there, the wildlife in Sydney is going to be way more aggressive than the wildlife in London. Really, the wildlife in London that you have to deal with are like rats, cockroaches, and foxes. Surprised there are these little foxes that live around London. In Sydney, if you go in the water, you have to deal with sharks, you have to deal with jellyfish, and the birds are like, around the whole city, are like super aggressive, particularly if they think you've got any food. Paul does, and you have to watch out for the drop bears. So if you're not familiar with the drop bears, those are the koalas. And legend is that the koalas, when they sit in the trees, they wait for visitors to walk underneath them, and then they drop from the tree and they eat your brains. So that's the legend of koalas and why they call them drop bears. Okay, so what do the beaches in London look like? Well, it would be wrong to say there are no beaches. There are beaches in London. This is the beach on the River Thames along the south bank of the river. Very, very picturesque, isn't it? Makes you want to take a little dip in that river, doesn't it? Okay, not really. But what London does have, where it doesn't have beaches, is it has really cool green spaces. There are a lot of parks in central London, royal parks, botanical gardens, those sorts of things. Sydney has a really great botanical garden too, so don't get me wrong on that perspective. But I do think that London integrates the parks more than Sydney does. Sydney has this kind of like one big park in it, where London has a lot more green spaces scattered throughout the city. Okay. So if you're somebody who likes to, go get a coffee and a book and read in a park, London's going to be a good place for you. Okay. Now, let's talk about hotels, and we're first going to start with London. So, London, I think picking a neighborhood in London is going to be a more significant impact to your trip than picking a neighborhood in Sydney, because in Sydney, they're much more concentrated around the central business district. Like, most of the hotels are kind of in the same place. But in London, they're definitely much more spread out. We've got the River Thames here in the middle. And in London, because it's kind of like the city's much more spread out, and I told you the traffic's worse and it's harder to get across the city, you might want to consider actually staying in a couple different hotels in different parts of London on your trip. But if you're just looking for a singular area or like where to stay, my preference of where to stay is definitely going to be on the north bank of the River Thames. So we've got the River Thames over here. And so you can see, just kind of like looking at this map of the River Thames, there's, when I just clicked Google Maps and I clicked show me hotels, more hotels on the north bank, less hotels on the south bank. The south bank is probably going to be cheaper for the most part for hotels, because most of the tourist attractions are on the north bank. The exception is like the London Eye is like kind of like down here. And then there's Waterloo train station. There's like a big train station over on this side. Those are two big things that are on the south bank. There's a Marriott that I like down here somewhere. The London County Hall. It's a cool, like the old county administration government building that's been turned into the hotel. But where I generally kind of like recommend people to look is like over here in this general area. And if you kind of like put in like Covent Garden as your home, which is right here. Did I pronounce that right? Covent. I have some blocks on some of these like British and Australian pronunciations of things, so apologies in advance for that. But put that in as like a good center place to stay. I also like around Trafalgar Square, which is right over here. The Mayfair district. This is like the high-end hoity-toity shopping district, so that's cool. Over around Westminster, that gets you around the Westminster Abbey, and anywhere in this. Chris, you're just scribbling on the map. Anyway, anywhere in this area is probably going to be pretty good. In a pinch, another hotel that we like in London is Hilton Paddington Station. So I mentioned that there's the train, like the fast train that'll get you into London, goes from London Heathrow direct to Paddington Station, and you can get off the train and the hotel's like integrated into the train station. It's not super close to the tourist stuff, but if you don't want to have to like schlep your stuff like luggage and this and that through the tube and all those things, you don't want to take an expensive taxi, that's a pretty good way to do that. We did that on our trip two trips ago with our daughter when she was early 5, but you know, we're packing like suitcases and stroller and all those things, and so that was a super convenient way to get in. Justin enjoys the Park Lane Hilton. I enjoy the Park Lane Marriott, but Park Lane is a nice area. One of my favorite hotels in London is also this one. This is the Renaissance St. Pancras Hotel. This one is at the Eurostar station. So if you're taking the train that goes under the channel between London and Paris, then this hotel is in that train station. This hotel is what I'm going to remark about a lot of London hotels that makes London different than Sydney. London has a lot of great historic properties. If you want to stay someplace really unique with a lot of deep history, London is where it's at. Because of that, the rooms are small and they're more expensive, and you could say more outdated because they're old. But this hotel, on the inside of it, like, is a really cool hotel. I mean, this is like in my list of like cool hotels that I've stayed at. This is absolutely one of them. This is the breakfast area in the hotel, and this breakfast area used to be the ticketing area for the train station, or like the lobby for the train station, like back in the day. So that's a pretty cool reuse of the space. These are the rooms. They are rather uninspiring. They have some historic rooms and they have some newer rooms. This is the new room at that hotel. And I'm a hotel snob, and so you'd be like, Chris, that doesn't look all that nice, but the location's great, the common areas are nice, and I didn't pay enough to book the historic rooms. The historic rooms in the historic wing section of this hotel, actually, the Spice Girls filmed one of their music videos in this hotel. Yes, and so Negima Lover says, it is the Spice Girls Hotel. By the way, I have a review of it, like I do of pretty much every hotel I've ever stayed at. So if you want to see more of the Renaissance St. Pancras Hotel, search for Renaissance St. Pancras, London. There we go. Databetics says we stayed near this area over a decade ago. Very cool. Kathy says we will be catching the Eurostar, so we'll look around St. Pancras Station. Yeah, and the great part about that station's really super well connected to the rest of London, so I think that's a great place to stay. Kathy says, is it expensive? I mean, with everything, like London is one of those places that's like super season dependent, so it didn't cost us a fortune because we didn't book the historic rooms. We just booked one of these base rooms, but I don't, that was a few years back, so I don't, everything gets weird in tourism about now. Henry, thank you for your support, Henry. Henry says, I hope your evening is going well. It is, Henry. Thank you. I hope your evening is going well, too. Do you plan to visit Australia again this year? Also, do you plan on exploring New Zealand someday? Probably. I don't plan to visit Australia this year, but that doesn't mean I won't. I don't know. Our travel is kind of like, we don't plan it too far out in advance. The next place we're going is Washington, D.C., because the USA is celebrating its 250th anniversary this year, and so Washington, D.C. has a bunch of kind of celebrations for that. We're going to take the Curious Princess to all the cool historic sites around there, George Washington's house, Thomas Jefferson's house. We were just at Legoland, California this past weekend, and they have a Lego build-out of Washington, D.C., and I was pointing out to her all of the buildings and monuments that we're going to see in Legos. And yes, I do hope to see New Zealand someday. Thank you. Okay. Alfredo says, I usually stay at the cheap hotels across the street from there. They are basic rooms, but save you money. Thank you for the tip, Alfredo. Solo travel, but that's probably another +1 for staying near St. Pancras Station. Negima Lover says, how many London train stations are considered hubs? There's a lot of big train stations in London. There's St. Pancras Station, certainly. There's Waterloo Station to the south. There's Paddington Station, and I'm gonna space on the names of the other ones. There's another train station that's near St. Pancras Station, so there's quite a few, and it's like there's not really like Unlike, say, in a place like Tokyo, where there's like a central train station that kind of like everything goes into, London's not really that way. These hubs, like Waterloo Station, services things to the north, Waterloo services things to the south, Paddington serves things to the north. You can kind of consider the River Thames to be like the border, and like most of the heavy trains and things like that don't cross that river. Victoria is the word for the other one I was looking at. Thank you, Yip Animation. That's also where you'll find the big bus. And then Kathy says King's Cross. Yeah, King's Cross. Thank you for the help. All right. That's why I love doing these as live streams, because if I have a brain fart, then the collective wisdom of the fellow explorers come to my rescue. And Euston Station. That's it. Euston Station, which is not integrated into St. Pancras, but it's like a 5-minute walk away. Thank you. Justin says Liverpool Street is another one if you are going to the east. All right. Justin says I should take my daughter to the Gold Coast of Australia. I'd like to. I've not been to the Gold Coast yet, so I need to. Okay. This is another London hotel. This was, what's this? This is a, I took this picture because this is, what's it called? Can't remember. Can't remember the name. This one's one that's near Trafalgar Square. And so it's a pretty basic, like, club quarters. The club quarters, Trafalgar Square. And you can see this room is not very big. Like, it's really, this was one of the bigger rooms in the, this isn't the smallest room you could book. And so this is like this is a, I would say by like London hotel standards, this is a pretty nice and pretty big room. Okay, so don't expect a lot for your money in London, is where I'm going. Okay. All right, let's talk about Sydney now. So what's the difference between hotels in London and hotels in Sydney? So in Sydney, looking at the map right here, what you see is this huge concentration of hotels that are right around here. And that roughly equates to Sydney's central business district. So that's where most people are going to stay. There are certainly more hotels that you get out on these lobes, or you get onto the north side of the harbor. There's some hotels over there that you can get cheaper. But if you want to be where all the action is, then you want to stay in the central business district that we zoom into right here. Now, talking about green space, just because we were talking about it before, I mentioned that Sydney does have this cool botanic garden, so it's right there, and it does have this big central park, which interestingly has the same name of one of the major parks in London, Hyde Park in Sydney, Hyde Park in London. So a lot of similarities between the two cities. Now, some of my favorite places to stay in Sydney, I like to stay here around Circular Quay, the Circular Quay neighborhood. The great part about Circular Quay is it's super well connected to transit. It is connected to like all the major ferry lines come into there. So if you're going to Manly Beach, you're going to the Taronga Zoo or things like that, really easy to come and go to those. It's also really close to get to this neighborhood over here called The Rocks, which is one of the big historic parts of Sydney. It's also close to the cruise ship terminal. So the cruise ships come in right there at Circular Quay. If you want super high-end and foofy, the Park Hyatt Sydney is right there too, which is like definitely one of those aspirational hotels. The Opera House is located right there. So just a lot of that stuff over that way. Another area that I like to stay in is over down here around Darling Harbour. There's a Hyatt Regency and there's a W Hotel. I like staying over there because it's close to Chinatown. Like Chinatown's over here, and which is really maybe the Asia town of Sydney. And so I find the food, if you're looking for like kind of, I call it like middle end food, there's better middle end food in my opinion if you stay down here over by Darling Harbour. Okay. But the difference in the hotels in Sydney being a newer city, Sydney has more modern hotels and bigger rooms, but less choice. There are definitely way more hotels in London. They're classic, they're historic, they're smaller, and they cost more. So in Sydney, you're going to get more for your money than you are in London. An example of one of these new modern hotels in Sydney is the W Hotel. It is the world's biggest W hotel, and I stayed there on my last trip in Sydney. It has a really cool rooftop swimming pool. It is like, this is inside one of the rooms. Like, it's really good. It's just one of those hotels that, like, I think it's cool to stay in. Some people really pan the hotel because they're like, oh, it has this, like, you know, maybe they had a room that, like, looked out on the freeway. It does sit between two freeways, but I guess if you have one, I'd Marriott. You know, I have Marriott Titanium status as a lifetime 1,000 nights plus at Marriott's, and so they upgraded me to the suite, which was really nice. And it is also, as Kathy says, it is also near the convention center. It is right there. Darling Harbour's near the convention center. Sydney is a big convention destination, so walking distance to the convention center over there. Justin says over at Circular Quay, they're opening a Waldorf Astoria. That is good to know. And Kathy agrees, nice hotels in Darling Harbour. And a lot of development in Darling Harbour. It's really like being built out. It's one of the new parts of Sydney. So, okay. Let's go on to food. Now, we've talked about hotels. Let's talk about food in the two cities. Okay, and so talking about food in London. London, I think, has historically had a reputation of having bad food. The first time I was in London, I was a wee young lad. My mom and we stopped in London. If you watched my video last week about delayed and canceled flights, we had some epic flight delay and ended up spending a night in London. And I remember in a taxi on a rainy day going by Buckingham Palace on the way to our airport provided hotel. But I remember we got this chicken from the hotel's restaurant, and it was like a fried chicken, and we cut into the fried chicken, and like all this grease splattered out at us as soon as we punctured the skin. The food then was pretty mediocre. But I think today London, it's like food scene has like really taken it up, not just a notch, but like taken it up about 10 notches. And I think in London, in addition to, you know, being popular for the full British breakfast, the full English breakfast being eggs, mushrooms, sausage, bacon, hash browns, tomato, beans, and what's not pictured on here would be the black pudding, or pudding that's made of like pig's blood. So if you really want the full English, then that's where you go. Typically some pastries, maybe some fruit, maybe tea, maybe some coffee, maybe some fruit juices. I mean, a full English breakfast like is going to keep you pretty full. But London also has a variety of global cuisines that are really authentic and are hard to find in a lot of other global cities. For example, the Indian food in London is amazing. Our favorite Indian restaurant anywhere. We've not been to India. So our favorite Indian restaurant that we've been to anywhere in the world that isn't India, because we haven't been there, is Dishoom, Dishoom. They have a few locations in London. This is a picture of some of the food. It's like one of those just like amazing places that you like dip into the lentils, the dal, the chicken tikka, the biryani, the naan. Super delicious. And so is the chai. The Indian tea is hot milk tea, really amazing. I've had chai in the USA before, and I've had chai traveling to a lot of other places, and again, I haven't been to India, but places that I've had the chai before, I usually found it gross. Then I went to Dishoom, and I was like, oh, this is what chai is. And so we've actually been on like quite a chai kick. Like when we go to the UK now, we bring back like a bunch of different chai teas. Same thing in Australia. There's actually a lot of good chai tea too, but I don't think it reaches the same level as that in London. Points Traveler says, probably the big reason for all this is London's become more of an international city, hence the better food. And Kathy says we'll have to try Dishoom. Make a reservation when you do, because they do book out. Negi My Lover says, have you tried the Indian food in Sydney? No. Probably I should, but I don't think. It didn't appear as good to me on the outside. And but I'll tell you what I eat in Sydney when we get to the Sydney section, which is probably different in a second. But London also has really great Chinese food. The Chinatown's pretty good. And there's also a lot of like historic pubs where, you can be like dining in like a 200-year-old restaurant that has a lot of great history to it. Okay. And so this is an example about like, I don't know, this is like, happy hour on some boat on the River Thames or something like that. And I also show this picture because sometimes people say, Chris, do you ever not wear a yellow shirt? And so, yes, sometimes I dress up, but not that often. Okay. So let's talk about Sydney now. Definitely something Sydney has in common with London is they also really enjoy their breakfast or their brekkie. They have the full Australian breakfast, which is, a variant of the full English breakfast. I would describe the culinary scene in Sydney to also be really good, more modern than I would say in London. They've taken a lot of these classic British foods, given them an Australian spin, and then like modernized it a bit. But Sydney's cuisine is also highly influenced by its proximity to the ocean and its proximity to Asia. What I like to eat when I go to Sydney is a lot of Malaysian food, a lot of Singaporean food, a lot of Thai food, because of Australia's proximity to those places. In particular, in the USA, we have a really lousy selection or choice for Malaysian food and Singaporean food. There are some, and you've even seen me review some of them. There's Paradise Dynasty here in Southern California. There's there's actually a really good place that just started selling laksa, lay shrimp ramen of all places, selling laksa and Singaporean Hainan chicken rice, but very few. But Australia has like Sydney has a ton of restaurants that just sell laksa. Like they only sell if you have no idea what laksa is, it's probably because you haven't been to Singapore or Malaysia. But it's a spicy curry noodle soup that's really popular in those countries. And so this is a typical dinner or typical meal or typical lunch that I would have in Sydney. This is one of my favorite restaurants in Sydney. It's called Mamak. It's a Malaysian restaurant that has Malaysian noodles, has the roti, the pulled tea. We get the sautés over there. It is really good. They have a location in Melbourne too, Mamak, M-A-M-A-K. So if you can only eat one place, go there. if you like the style of food. There's some people who watch my Sydney videos and like, Chris, do you eat anything other than Asian food when you're in Sydney? Sure. The burgers are really good. I think the Italian food is really solid in Sydney. Sydney also has a really solid seafood scene. I mentioned seafood has that close proximity to the ocean. And so Sydney is home to the Sydney Fish Market, which is the largest fish market in Australia. So going and hanging out there for an afternoon is a great way to get your fill of seafood. And what Sydney also does better than London is the coffee. And I didn't believe people. I didn't believe my Australian friends before I'd been there that were like, Chris, the coffee in Australia is like better than almost anywhere. Definitely better than in the UK. I know these are fighting words, but I think it's true. The coffee, I'm not a big coffee drinker, but I really enjoy the coffee when in Sydney. Sydney, particularly if you're into espresso-based coffees, Sydney's coffee scene really quite good. And Sydney emphasizes the local independent roasters over the big coffee chains. Negima Lover says, can't forget the peanut sauce for the saute. Great point as well. Yip Animation says, yes, that food, the Malaysian food, looks like the hawker place in the Las Vegas South Premium Outlets. Indeed, right? So that was in my recent video in Las Vegas. Yip Animation says, have you tried dim sum? The dim sum in London, I've loved the food in Chinatown. I really do. So yes. Let's see. Justin says there's a lot more avocados in Australian breakfast. All right, Australia has that in common with California. Databetic says I probably make the same face to beans for brekkie as people make to me eating Spam. I like Spam, so there we go. And Databetic really likes the bloomin' onions in Sydney, which is popular at the Outback Steakhouse. There we go. The the good old American Australian steakhouse, which does actually have a location in Australia. I don't think it was the first, but I think they opened them in the US and then opened them in Australia. Kathy says, good coffees at Mick Cafe Macas. I've not had the coffee at Mickey D's there, so. Okay. So, to kind of like summarize that here in the food section, we'll make this bigger. In London, some of the traditional dishes are fish and chips, afternoon tea, Sunday roast, curry, Indian foods. Some of the historic places to eat, pubs, food markets, they're really good. Cafes. I think London has a higher-ended fine dining scene. If you're looking for quick food in London, pies with mashed potatoes, but they're not like, it's not like a cherry pie. It's not like a berry pie. It's like meat pies, sausage rolls. You'll find those in Australia too. Street food. And then if we go over to the Sydney section up here, the iconic dishes, I would call it like, modern Aussie, where you see like the avocado toast. They do like their avocado in Sydney. The seafood, the Asian fusion, cafe fare with your coffee. Iconic places to eat in Sydney are definitely going to be along the waterfront, the Darling Harbour, around the rocks, the beachside cafes, the Sydney Fish Market, eating in Darling Harbour. And if I make myself go away so you can see what's in the corner, one thing that is unique in Australia in the dining section, and this is like Australia, not just Sydney, but different between Australia and the UK, is getting charged more if you're eating on a Sunday or getting charged more if you're eating on a public holiday due to Australia's labor laws, where like they have to pay the employees more if they're working on Sundays or public holidays. Then the restaurants usually just pass that expense on to the customers. So expect to pay more if you're eating at a off time, I might call it, or a popular time in that case. And you might think like, oh, it's only maybe the small restaurants, this and that. Even the W Hotel, the W Hotel in Sydney would charge more if you were dining on one of those days. So yeah, Janelle says, I never knew that. Should be like that here. Okay, let's go to some of the things to do. Okay, so starting with London. Things to do in London. We're on number 9 here of 12, so we're rounding out to the bottom of this. London is the intellectual, historical, and cultural heavyweight. London hosts 3 of the world's top 10 museums and art galleries and 170 other museums. The museum count in London is crazy. So if you like museums, London's going to be the place. Places like the British Museum, the National Gallery of Art, the Tate Modern are super famous and not to be missed. This is also the Natural History Museum, which is amazing as well. The Curious Princess really loved spending a whole afternoon seeing the dinosaur bones and the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and even the restaurant's kind of like a cool dinosaur-themed restaurant in the Natural History Museum. And most of them are free. Like, they're really good museums and they're free, which is super amazing. London's West End rivals New York City's Broadway. So if you're looking to take on a theater show, a musical, you'll find a lot of great ones in London. Last time I was there, I saw The Book of Mormon, which is hilarious because it's an American play. But I wanted to see how they did the American Book of Mormon play in London. And you know what? They did it just as good, I think, as when I saw it. I've seen it a lot. So it was just as good in London as the other shows of it that I've seen. Okay, so now how does that compare to Sydney? I would say Sydney's primary attractions are much more monumental and geographical rather than institutional or inside a building. Like, Sydney's big attractions are outside that you like look at and admire and experience. The harbor, the beach, the bridge, the opera house. There are museums, but let's be real. They are not to the level of London's museums. Some Sydney-siders could argue with me, but they'd be wrong. But again, like, the Opera House is super cool and it's super iconic. And if you are there on Australia Day, then they do super big festivities around the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, so some fireworks and things like that. So that's worth check out to put on your calendar and be like, am I there during Australia Day? And if so, head over to Darling Harbour and see the festivities. Sydney also has really amazing coastal walks. and a really neat zoo, the Taronga Zoo, which is right on the harbor there. Great views. You can see the kangaroos, and you can see the harbor at the same time. Okay, let's talk about day trips super briefly. I'm not going to get into a list of all the day trips, but mostly talk about the concept of day trips between the places. And Sydney, the way much of Australia is there's like the city, and then there's like nothing. There's like nothing. There's some cool mountains that you can go to, but like there's not a lot of day trips from Sydney. And there's going to be people from Sydney to be like, Chris, that's not true. It's true in comparison to London. And so I zoomed this out, and I have London and I have Paris. And like, you can take a day trip from London to Paris, just a couple hours from London to Paris, because of the amazing train network from London. So like, you know, everything that's like around here and then, you know, here, is like day trip range from London. Some of our favorite day trips include Oxford, also include what's here on the next page. Bath, the Roman city of Bath, is a super cool day trip from London. It's this really historic city that has these natural hot springs in it that the Romans loved, and they felt the water healed them. So if you want to have one city as a base for a long time and explore, you're going to find more of that in London than you will in Sydney. You know, if you're around Sydney, you probably just want to move along, move along to Melbourne, you know, as like the next big city over on that area. Okay. So we're rounding out here to talk about safety, because people always ask me, Chris, you know, how safe are these places? So let's pull this up. And just to like, you know, answer the like, if you are going to one place because it's safer than the other, I think Sydney is probably safer than London. And in particular, because of what tourists experience the most in London, and I have experienced in London, is petty crime. Thieves, pickpockets who are going to steal your stuff and ruin your vacation. Australia, Sydney does not have as many of those. If you're on the beach, maybe there's more issue of pilfering things on the beach. That's probably where it happens more in Sydney than people ripping your phone out of your hand. But in London, like, that's a huge issue. Last time I was there, a friendly police officer who watches Yellow Productions as I was filming something with my phone, she came up to me and said, Chris, I love your channel, but really be careful with your phone, because people just come through here on their mopeds and they rip the phones right out of people's hands. You know, I think as cities go, they're both safe, but if you were like taking a young family and things like that, and you were like, where's the safest place to go? I think it's going to be Sydney. So to wrap it all up right here, which city should you go to? If you are interested in history and culture, go to London. You're going to find museums. Riding the tube is cool. You're going to find a lot of diversity in the food. You're going to have to be aware of the high petty crime, but London is best for the culture vultures, the history buffs, the global foodies, and people that are also doing their short European layover because they're connecting through Heathrow on the way to somewhere else. Choose Sydney if you want someplace that's laid back and coastal, if you like the beach, if you like the outdoors life, you want to go on the cool ferries, you like seafood, you like Asian food, you want to swim, you want to see the iconic beaches, the sunshine, and you want to surf. So, fellow explorers, that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know. And we're going to go ahead and go on to Q&A.
Fellow explorers, it is now Q&A time. If you've got a question, I've got an answer.
All right. Stephen Tran says, definitely don't want to get pickpocketed. I remember when somebody stole Topher. Super sad. I remember when somebody stole Topher too. That's what started the Yellow Productions crew, where many of you sent in the Tophers to help replace the original Topher. So yes, I have no animosity towards London as a city, but I have an animosity towards thieves. Rip Topher, thank you. Candy says, I love Sydney. Joanna says, I'm going to Sydney first. Yip Animation says, I prefer London. Justin Thomas says, ¿Por qué no los dos? No number two? I don't know. Perhaps I missed the question. Or perhaps my Espanol is no bueno. I don't know. Yip Animation says, which one has better Chinese and Hong Kong food? I think it's going to be London in that case. Hong Kong food, I think it's going to be London because of the whole, like, you know, Hong Kong was a colony of London, of the UK kind of thing. Modern Chinese food, it's going to be Sydney because there are a lot of Chinese people that have moved into Sydney. So there's a lot of food to cater to all the Chinese people that like recently moved into Sydney. Okay. Oh, Justin says it's my Spanish is poor. Why not both? Absolutely. They're both great. I've been to both. I've been to both multiple times. So that tells you that I enjoy both. But they definitely have a very different slant and feel of the vacation. Alfredo says London during the holidays, which I guess would be like the winter Christmas kind of holidays, like the Christmas markets and things like that. I agree. Super lit up, super nice. Henry says, Chris, in all your travels, did you ever encounter any dangerous wildlife, such as big spiders, large reptiles? Thoughts? No. I mean, not personally. Like I said, I've been at the beach when they had like a shark encounter, but I haven't gotten bit by any big spiders or large reptiles. I did, in one of the cities I was in, I was driving between Sydney and Melbourne. One city that had just all these kangaroos, like all these just kangaroos hanging out everywhere. And, you know, the locals tell me don't get too close to the kangaroos because they kick. So it's cool to see. You know, you don't really see the kangaroos in the cities, but like they absolutely exist when you get out. Blue Tornado says, work on your Spanish pronunciation and it will be good. Yo quiero Taco Bell. How's that? No. All right, that's it. Diabetic says, I've only been to London years and years ago. Australia's on a short list for future trips. Keith says, I like both cities, but not the people. Not very polite. Perth was better for people compared to Sydney. I prefer New York City to London because New Yorkers leave you alone. Interesting, Keith. I think it's obviously like as to what's friendly to different people, you know, different strokes for different folks. I think New Yorkers also definitely have a reputation for being unfriendly because they're like, they want to get things quick. But actually, I think that actually goes to like friendliness sometimes, you know. Keith says, Melbourne. Yeah, Melbourne. That's right. Okay. Yip Animation says, Chris, which one do you prefer between the two and why? Oh, you're going to get me into a picking match. I will answer it this way, which is the one that we tend to go to London more because the flights are shorter and cheaper for us from LAX than they are to Sydney. There we go. So, I love both places. And, as I've gotten to know the people, I love the people in both places too. I love the adventurous spirit of the Australians and the British people. I love their fashion, way more fashionable than I'm ever going to be. Okay, Alfredo says, "Have you tried kangaroo meat?" Yes. I was not amazed by it. I've absolutely had the kangaroo meat. Yip Animation says, what a first-time traveler from the U.S. or Canada. Again, I would just, what do you like? If you're a first-time traveler, I think both are, if you're like, well, this is first-time travel. Like, if someone's a first-time travel, like, if this is their first international trip, I'd pick Sydney. Because there's less pickpockets. Like, literally, that's why I'd pick Sydney over Australia if it's somebody's first international trip ever. Okay. If they like Indian food, then I would say go to London because, as Ryu 2 says, I think London is way more Indian than New York or Sydney. P says, who has the better English? Ooh, fighting words. I think there can be arguments, but I think the Londoners would say they have, they have the proper English in London. I like the casual English in Australia. Justin says, do you find Sydney more American than London? Absolutely. Sydney is way more American than London is. Loy says, will you do a hotel review of the Park Hyatt Sydney the next time you're back? I really wanted to stay there last time, but the rates were just ridiculous, super ridiculous. So I could not justify the price. Candy says, Australian people seem to dress up more than in the US. Yes, I would say the Londoners dress up the most, then Sydney-siders dress up second most, and then anywhere in the U.S. dress up less. Like even in New York or Washington, D.C., dress up less than most Londoners or Sydney-siders. Okay. Keith says, I found New Yorkers minding their business, which may seem unfriendly, but when asked for help, they were generally helpful and outgoing. Yeah, I think that's true, Keith. Blue Tornado says, Sydney would be my second choice after Tokyo or Osaka. Well, there you go. I mean, yes, Chris would say, if it's your first trip anywhere, I think go to Tokyo. There we go. But I'm biased. There might be people who say they want to start with a place that they speak the same language. So I see nothing wrong with starting with Sydney or London. And Justin says, not me. I live in shorts and flip-flops. Lotte says, did you find UK or Australia more of a place you would rather live? I like both places. I mean, this is one where if you say like Chris for a long time, where like for a short time, I'd love to live in both places. I think that for a long time, especially being a travel YouTuber, London's probably just better connected for me to the rest of the world than Sydney is. But I think I could have a great life in either city. I would just have to avoid the dangerous reptiles. Absolutely. I think because of that, if you asked my wife, OC girl, she would pick London because of the lack of dangerous reptiles, snakes, spiders, all of those things. So, and OC girl, like Alex from the Pacific Northwest, she likes the more cool, moody weather of London than of Sydney. I grew up in San Diego, so I'm more of a beach boy. I would miss the beach in London that I wouldn't miss the beach in Sydney. I would feel right, like when I go to the beaches of Sydney, I feel right at home. Okay. All right, let's go to the giveaway.
Yes, it's the time you've been waiting for. It's time for the giveaway.
All right, fellow explorers, in every live stream, I always give away a Yellow Productions crew shirt to somebody who can answer one of my questions shipped anywhere to you in the world. And my question to you today to win this shirt is, what was the musical that I saw the last time I was in London? If you're the first person to answer that question, you'll win that shirt. If you don't get to win one and you want to buy one, you can pick one up at the Yellow Productions shop, shop.yellow-productions.com. Or if you wonder, Chris, when is the next live stream? You can head over to the Yellow Productions update, sign up for my email list, and every time I've scheduled a new live stream, I will let you know. By the way, there will be no live stream next week, so stay tuned until mid or later March for the next live stream.
And now we have a winner chicken dinner.
Congratulations to Normany One Eye. You are a winner. Send me an email to chris@yellow-productions.com. You'll find that email in the description of this video. Let me know your address, let me know your size of shirt, and I will get that headed right out to you. Well, all right, fellow explorers, thanks so much for hanging out with me to talk about London versus Sydney. Always a great time. We got up to 58 likes here on the live stream, so thank you so much. If you didn't hit the like button, please do so on the way out. And as usual, I won't say goodbye because I'll see you in the next video.